At 17, Amara Johnson had learned that people often decided who she was before she ever spoke. They saw the wheelchair first, the scar along her eyebrow second, and her quiet expression last. At Eastbrook High, whispers followed her through the corridors like a shadow. Some students stared. Others laughed when she needed extra time to navigate the crowded hallways. But the worst were the three boys who had turned humiliation into a daily ritual. They called her names, moved objects into her path, and once deliberately knocked her backpack from her lap before walking away laughing. Amara rarely responded, not because she was weak, but because she understood something most teenagers did not. Reacting to cruelty did not always make it disappear. Her grandmother, Evelyn, had taught her that dignity was not something other people could give or take away. They can disrespect you, she would say, but they cannot define you unless you let them. What nobody at Eastbrook knew was that Amara had spent most of her life training in martial arts. Years earlier, after a serious accident changed the way she moved, Evelyn had introduced her to a local instructor named Marcus Reed. Marcus did not treat Amara like a fragile child. He treated her like a student. He studied her balance, her timing, her reach, and the ways she could generate power from her upper body and core. Amara adapted techniques to fit her mobility, turning limitations into variables rather than verdicts. By 16, she had become an extraordinary competitor in adaptive martial arts, winning regional tournaments and earning respect from instructors who had initially underestimated her. Yet she never told anyone at school. She did not want applause. She wanted to be treated like an ordinary girl. Then came the day everything changed. It began in the cafeteria. Amara was eating lunch with her friend Nia when one of the boys, Tyler, approached her table with two friends behind him. He leaned against the wheelchair and smirked. "Still carrying that thing everywhere?" he asked. Nia immediately stood up. "Leave her alone." Tyler laughed. Then, with deliberate carelessness, he moved a chair directly into Amara's path. The surrounding conversations faded as students began watching. Amara looked at the obstacle, then at Tyler. "Move it." Her voice was calm. "Or what?" Tyler replied. "You'll report me?" Someone laughed. Another student lifted a phone. For a moment, Amara felt the familiar pressure in her chest. Not fear exactly. Exhaustion. She was tired of being made into entertainment. Tired of people believing that quietness meant helplessness. Tyler stepped closer, expecting her to shrink. Instead, Amara looked directly into his eyes. "You should move." He did not. He reached toward her backpack, but before he could grab it, the cafeteria doors opened. Marcus Reed had arrived to speak with the school administration about Amara's upcoming National Adaptive Martial Arts competition. He saw the crowd. He saw the phones. And he saw Amara's expression. He knew immediately that something was wrong. "Step away from her," Marcus said. Tyler turned around. "Who are you?" Marcus did not answer. The principal arrived seconds later, followed by a teacher who began ordering students to put their phones away. But the damage had already been done. The video spread through the school before the final bell. By afternoon, Amara was being discussed by people who barely knew her. Some called her brave. Others mocked her. A few claimed she had started something simply because she had refused to be intimidated. That evening, Amara sat in the training hall with her grandmother and Marcus. She stared at the floor. "I don't want to fight them," she said. Marcus nodded. "Then don't." Amara looked surprised. "But I thought you wanted me to compete." "Competing is different from proving yourself to bullies," he replied. "Your skill belongs to you. You don't owe anyone a demonstration." The next morning, the school announced an assembly about harassment and discrimination. The principal invited Amara to speak if she wished. She almost refused. Then Evelyn placed a hand on her shoulder. "Tell them what you want them to understand." Amara rolled to the microphone in front of hundreds of students. The room was unusually quiet. She looked across the audience and recognized Tyler sitting near the back. "You saw a wheelchair," she began. "You saw someone moving differently from you, and some of you decided that meant I was less capable, less valuable, or easier to embarrass. That decision was yours. It was never mine." Nobody laughed. "I am not asking for pity. I am asking for basic human respect. And I am not going to pretend discrimination becomes harmless because everyone calls it a joke." Tyler stared at the floor. Amara continued. "You don't know what someone has survived. You don't know what they have built in silence. And you don't know how much strength can exist behind a person you have already decided to underestimate. Then Marcus stood and announced that Amara had qualified for the National Adaptive Martial Arts Championship. The room erupted in surprise. Students who had mocked her began whispering among themselves. But Amara did not smile because they were impressed. She smiled because, for once, they were listening. Weeks later, at the championship, Amara entered the competition surrounded by athletes, coaches, and spectators who understood exactly what she had worked for. She moved with precision, patience, and remarkable control. Her strength was not about destroying an opponent. It was about discipline, strategy, and knowing exactly when to act. When the final match ended, Amara had won. She sat quietly as the medal was placed around her neck. Cameras flashed. Her grandmother cried. Marcus simply nodded, because he had known long before anyone else what Amara was capable of becoming. When she returned to Eastbrook, something had changed. Tyler apologized publicly, not because he feared her, but because he finally understood the harm he had caused. The school also changed its policies around harassment and accessibility. It was not a perfect transformation, and Amara knew better than anyone that one apology could not erase months of cruelty. But justice was rarely one dramatic moment. Sometimes it was a series of choices that made cruelty harder to ignore. As Amara rolled through the school hallway that morning, students moved aside, not because they were afraid of her, but because they respected her space. She passed the cafeteria where everything had started and kept going. She did not need revenge. She had something far more powerful, her dignity intact, her future ahead of her, and the knowledge that nobody's prejudice had ever been strong enough to define her. The girl they had humiliated had never been powerless. They simply had not bothered to see her.